Before the Velisk Imperium ever pointed their ships toward the small, unremarkable system with the pale blue third planet, they were given a single solemn warning. It came from the Cygnian Elders, a race so old they had watched stars be born and die. The Cygnian emissary, a being of shimmering light and slow, resonant sound, appeared before the Velisk Grand Admiral Krell on the bridge of his flagship. The Velisk, a species of tall-scaled reptilians, valued logic, order, and strength above all. They saw the galaxy as a simple equation of predator and prey. Grand Admiral Krell, his black-scaled crest rigid with impatience, regarded the emissary. "You have requested this audience, Elder. Speak," he hissed, his voice like dry leaves. The Cygnian's light pulsed gently. "We have seen your projections. Your fleets gather. You plan to absorb the species known as humans. We counsel you against this. Strongly." Krell's second-in-command, a younger, greener-scaled male, let out a low chuckle. "Counsel us? Elder, we are the Velisk Imperium. We are the apex. We do not take counsel from floating lights who have not fired a weapon in 10 millennia. The Cygnian remained focused on Krell. "Do not mistake their small stature for weakness. Do not mistake their fragmented societies for chaos. And above all," the light pulsed a deep, warning red, "do not, under any circumstances, force them to unite. They are persistent." Krell steepled his three-fingered hands. "Persistent. A quality found in insects, Elder. We have studied this species. They are mammals, soft-skinned, short-lived. They spend more time fighting each other than they do expanding. Their entire history is a catalog of self-inflicted wounds. They are divided by philosophies, by skin pigment, by the invisible lines they draw on their own dirt. They are not a threat. They are messy. We will bring them order, a swift, clean conquest." The Cygnian Elder seemed to sigh, a sound like fading wind chimes. "You see their chaos as a failing. You do not see that it is the very thing that makes them dangerous. They are not forged in logic, Admiral. They are forged in fire and emotion. You cannot calculate them. You will lose," Krell's patience snapped. "Lose! Against a species that still uses chemical combustion for ground transport? Against a species whose grand fleet is a collection of mismatched, ugly vessels? Your warning is noted, and it is dismissed. Leave my bridge." The Cygnian's light faded. "The warning stands," its voice echoed, thin and sad. "They will not fight as you expect. You will not understand their sacrifice, and by the time you do, it will be far too late. The Velisk flagship, the indomitable Claw, and the entire Third Imperial Fleet tore a hole in space-time and jumped toward the nearest human colony. It was a small agricultural world in the Tau Ceti system named Haven. It was home to 10 million farmers, engineers, and families. It had a local defense militia of 12 ships, 12 small, outdated corvettes and frigates. When the Velisk fleet arrived, it was like a mountain range appearing in the sky. Hundreds of sleek, obsidian-black Velisk destroyers and cruisers blotted out the stars, dwarfing the tiny defense ships. At the center of the formation sat the indomitable Claw, a dreadnought so large it had its own gravitational pull. Grand Admiral Krell opened a channel to the colony. "Human inhabitants, I am Grand Admiral Krell of the Velisk Imperium. Your world is now our property. Your lives are ours to govern. You have one cycle to disable your weapons, power down your defenses, and prepare for Imperial governors to land. Comply, and you will be integrated as a servant class. Resist, and you will be cleansed." Krell waited, expecting the standard response of fear, of panicked negotiations, of attempts to surrender. Instead, the channel remained silent for almost a full minute. Then a voice came through. It was not a politician. It was not a military commander. It sounded old, tired. "This is Governor Aris of Haven. We're just farmers. We don't have much, but what we have we built with our own hands. We're not looking for a fight, but we don't take orders from bullies." The connection clicked off. Krell's lipless mouth pulled back in what passed for a Velisk smile. "Such emotion," he hissed to his second. "So chaotic. They choose death over logic. Very well. He pointed one long, black claw at the main view screen, at the 12 tiny human ships forming a pathetic line in front of their green world. "Cull the herd. Show them the price of persistence." The Velisk fleet's weapon ports opened. Banks of plasma lances and kinetic drivers charged, glowing with terrifying cold blue light. The battle for Haven and the first lesson for the Imperium was about to begin. Krell settled into his command chair, already bored. This would be over in less than an hour. He had a timetable to keep. The conquest of Earth itself was scheduled for the end of the month. The Velisk lances fired. They were beams of pure, focused energy, designed to pierce the heavy armor of capital ships. Against the small human corvettes, the effect was devastating. The first ship, the Haven's Light, simply vanished, vaporized in an instant. The second, the Farmer's Resolve, was cut in half, its reactor core detonating in a silent, blossoming fireball. Grand Admiral Krell watched, unmoved. This was the natural order. The strong consumed the weak. "Tactical," he said, his voice flat. "Report their response. Are they scattering? Are they attempting to warp?" The tactical officer, a young Velisk, tilted his head, his sensors focused. "Admiral, they are not. They are tightening their formation. Sir, they are advancing." Krell leaned forward. It was true. The remaining 10 human ships were accelerating. Not away from the Velisk fleet, but toward it. It was madness. It was like plankton attacking a whale. "They are suicidal," Krell hissed. "What is their weapon status?" "They are firing, Admiral. Low-yield kinetic rounds. Unguided rockets. Sir, they are firing their point defense cannons. The rounds are burning up 1,000 kilometers from our shields." Krell felt a flash of insult. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution. "Ignore them," Krell commanded. "Target the planetary defense grid. Silence their ground-based weapons. Then prepare the landing craft. I want our troops on the ground by the next cycle. This resistance is a waste of energy." The Velisk fleet shifted its fire, sending lances of plasma down at the planet. But the tiny human ships, now deep inside the Velisk formation, did something new. They split into pairs. They ignored the massive cruisers and the dreadnought. They dove at the smaller Velisk destroyers. "Admiral!" the tactical officer shouted, his calm breaking. "The human ships, they are ramming us!" "Impossible," Krell snapped. But it was happening. A human frigate, the Hope's End, its engines glowing cherry red, accelerated to an impossible speed. It didn't fire. It simply aimed itself. It plowed into the side of a Velisk destroyer. The destroyer's shields flared, buckled, and failed. The impact tore the Velisk ship open, the human ship embedding itself deep in its hull before both vessels exploded in a conflagration of shrapnel and plasma. Krell was on his feet. "What is this? They are destroying themselves to kill one of our smallest ships? This is tactically insane. It's a waste of material." "Another one, sir." And another. The human militia, it seemed, had only one order. They weren't trying to win. They weren't trying to survive. They were trying to be expensive. Each human ship sold itself, not for glory, but for time, and for metal. They were forcing the Velisk fleet to pay for every inch of space. Down on the planet, Governor Aris watched the sky burn. He stood in the militia command center, a reinforced bunker beneath the main city dome. With him was Captain Eva Rostova, the head of Haven's ground defense. She was a woman in her 40s, her face hard, her eyes grim. "They've bought us 2 hours, Governor," Eva said, her voice rough. 2 hours. The last of the ships, the Prairie Wind, just went down. "May their names be remembered," Aris said softly. He turned to a young technician. "Is the evacuation complete?" The technician shook his head, not looking up from his console. "Negative, sir. The Shepherd's Flute, our one refugee transport, is loaded. 10,000 children, but we can't get it out. The Velisk have a picket line around the planet. It'll be vaporized before it clears the atmosphere." Aris closed his eyes. 10,000 children, the future of their colony, trapped. "Then we buy them more time," Eva said, chambering a round into her pulse rifle. "The Velisk are landing. My teams are in position. They're expecting farmers. We'll show them what a harvest looks like on Haven." The Velisk ground invasion began. thousands of 8-foot-tall, black-scaled warriors, clad in gleaming armor and carrying heavy plasma repeaters, stormed out of their landing craft. They marched in perfect, logical formations toward the main colony dome. They expected to find terrified civilians ready to be chained. They found nothing. The streets were empty. The air was silent. The Velisk ground commander, Sub-Admiral Vorg, stopped his troops. "Scan for life forms," he ordered. "Sir," his adjutant reported. "Readings are everywhere. They're below us, in the tunnel systems. The agricultural conduits!" "Then flush them out," Vorg commanded. His troops advanced into the central plaza, and the world erupted. The farmers of Haven were not just farmers. They were miners, engineers, demolition experts. The ground of the plaza exploded, swallowing an entire company of Velisk shock troops. Pulse rifle fire stitched the air from apartment windows. Makeshift traps, electrical grids powered by construction batteries, saw blades launched from repurposed logging equipment, sprang from every alley. It was not a war. It was a pest control operation, and the Velisk were the pests. The fighting was brutal, close quarters, and deeply illogical. The Velisk were being attacked by old men with shotguns, by women using welding torches as weapons, by automated tractors packed with explosives. Vorg, watching from his lander, was furious. His perfectly trained, perfectly logical troops were being confused to death. They were dying to ambushes set by civilians who should have been cowering. "Fire on the buildings!" he roared. "Burn them out! Bring the domes down!" Back on the indomitable Claw, Grand Admiral Krell watched the ground engagement report with a growing sense of disgust. This was not clean. This was not orderly. This was chaos. "They are forcing us to destroy the very infrastructure we came to claim," he muttered. "They are spoiling their own nests. Why?" His tactical officer pointed to a new reading. "Admiral, the planetary defense grid, it's not destroyed. It's rerouting. The energy signature is enormous. It's coming from the planet's geothermal core." Krell stared. The energy building was not that of a weapon. It was unstable. It was the signature of a reactor about to go critical. A geothermal plant, powering an entire planet. "They aren't trying to fire the grid," Krell whispered, a cold, alien feeling, the first flicker of doubt touching his mind. They're not. They can't be. A new transmission came from the planet. It wasn't to the Velisk. It was a colony-wide broadcast, and the Velisk were just listening in. It was Governor Aris. His voice was calm. "To all citizens of Haven, the last defense ships are gone. The ground teams have done their duty. You have held them. You have bought the time. Now, it is my turn. Captain Rostova, get to the shepherd's flute. Get our children out. This is my last order." Krell's eyes widened. "Tactical! The refugee ship, find it!" "There, Admiral." "Launching from the dark side of the planet!" "It's small, heavily shielded. Looks like a bulk freighter." "Destroy it!" Krell bellowed. "We can't!" The officer shrieked. "The energy from the core? It's overloading our sensors. It's a massive planet-wide spike." On the screen, Governor Aris looked up, as if he could see Krell through the planet. He smiled, a sad human smile. "Haven was our home," he said, his hand on a large red lever. "We built it from the dust. If we cannot keep it, no one will. For Earth. For the ones who come after." Krell finally understood. The ships weren't defending the planet. The ground troops weren't trying to win. They were all a distraction. They were delaying him. They were holding his fleet in orbit, all ships. Krell roared, his voice cracking with a new, terrifying emotion. "Full reverse! Get us out of orbit! Get us away from the planet, now!" But it was far, far too late. Governor Aris pulled the lever, Part 3. The planet Haven did not just explode. That would have been too simple, too quick. The geothermal core, its regulators and safety systems deliberately overloaded, went critical. It was a process that began deep in the mantle. The planet's magnetic field collapsed first, a silent, invisible ripple. Then the crust shattered. Like a ceramic mug dropped on concrete, Haven broke apart. A wave of superheated rock, molten metal, and pressurized plasma erupted outward at a significant fraction of the speed of light. It was not a bomb. It was the planet itself weaponized. The Valisk fleet was still in a low, tight orbit, its ships positioned to bombard the surface and support its ground troops. They were directly in the blast radius. The Valisk destroyers and frigates closest to the planet were vaporized instantly. They did not have time to raise shields. They did not have time to send a distress call. They were simply erased, scoured from existence by a wave of planetary fire. The larger cruisers further out fared little better. Their shields flared, held for a microsecond, and then were overwhelmed by the sheer, unimaginable mass of the impact. Continent-sized pieces of rock, traveling at impossible speeds, punched through Valisk warships as if they were paper. On the bridge of the indomitable Claw, there was no sound but the high-pitched shriek of alarms. Grand Admiral Krell was thrown from his command chair as a piece of Haven's moon, caught in the blast, slammed into the dreadnought's port side. "Shields gone!" his tactical officer screamed, his scales pale with terror. "Weapons offline! Hull breach on decks 12 through 20. Main engines are gone, Admiral! We are dead in space." Krell hauled himself up, clinging to a console. He looked at his view screen. Where a green and blue planet had been, there was now a new asteroid belt, glowing cherry red. His fleet, his invincible fleet, was gone. Out of 300 ships, he could count perhaps 50. And all of them were crippled, burning, venting atmosphere into the void. They had been defeated. Not by a superior navy, not by advanced technology. They had been defeated by farmers, by a single old man with his hand on a switch. Krell finally understood the Cygnians' warning. Do not mistake their fragmented societies for chaos. He had seen chaos, but it was a focused chaos, a chaos aimed directly at him. They are persistent. They had persisted until their very last breath, and then used that breath to destroy their own home, just to deny it to him. "Admiral," his second-in-command stammered, his voice trembling. "The human refugee ship, the Shepherd's Flute, it survived. The blast wave, the electromagnetic pulse from the planet's core, it acted as a shield. It hid their launch. They're gone. They got away." Krell felt a coldness he had never known. The humans had not just sacrificed their planet to destroy his fleet. They had sacrificed their planet to save one ship. A ship full of children. They planned this, Krell whispered. All of it. The ship ramming, the ground ambushes. It was all just to hold us here, to pin us to their anvil, while they dropped the hammer of their own world. "Sir," the tactical officer said, his voice now quiet, hollow, "I am detecting new signatures. Warp signatures. Multiple. They are emerging. Behind us!" Krell's head snapped up. Behind them? In their blind spot? That was impossible. His long-range sensors, now offline, would have detected any fleet approaching. But there they were, appearing out of warp one by one. But they weren't sleek warships. They were ugly. They were massive, clunky, asymmetrical vessels. They looked like construction ships, industrial haulers, asteroid miners, and in front of them, leading this fleet of work vessels, was a single massive human warship. It was scarred, dented, and looked ancient, but it bristled with guns. On its side, in stark white letters, was its name, TSA Endurance. A channel opened. Krell's main view screen, flickering and cracked, showed a new face. It was a human male, old like the governor. His hair was gray, his face a map of wrinkles. He wore a simple dark blue jumpsuit, not a uniform. He looked profoundly tired, but his eyes were like chips of cold, hard ice. "This is General Thorne of the Terran Systems Alliance Fleet," the man's voice crackled, calm and deep. "Grand Admiral Krell, I see you've met the people of Haven." Krell, his pride wounded but his arrogance intact, straightened. "Human! You are savages! You destroy your own! You sacrifice your people! You are monsters!" General Thorne did not raise his voice. He did not get angry. He just watched Krell for a long, silent moment. "We are what you made us, Krell. We knew we couldn't beat your fleet in a fair fight. Our ships are slower. Your weapons are stronger. Your technology is superior. The Cygnian elders warned us, too. They told us you were coming. They told us you valued logic and strength." Thorne leaned forward. So we didn't plan on a fair fight. We planned on a human fight. Haven. Haven was a sacrifice. A terrible, beautiful sacrifice. They volunteered. They held you in place. They tagged you for us. Krell's blood ran cold. Tagged us? Thorn nodded. That geothermal explosion. It wasn't just a bomb. It coated your hulls in a unique, highly radioactive isotope. An isotope that our mining fleet can lock onto from halfway across the system. You can't run. You can't hide. Your ships are crippled, Admiral, and you are covered in the dust of the very people you came to enslave. Krell stared as the massive, ugly mining ships began to move, fanning out. Their weapons were not lasers. They were projectors. Massive, spinning arms. You Vilisk? Thorn continued, his voice hardening. You see space as empty, a void between targets. We're builders. We're miners. We see it as full of resources, full of ammunition. The trap was sprung. The human courage had shocked the Vilisk. The sacrifice had been made, and now the true climax was about to begin. The Vilisk had been warned, and they hadn't listened. Part 4, Grand Admiral Krell stared at the human fleet. It was an insult. A fleet of civilian trash haulers and rock crackers had come to fight his dreadnought. What is this? He demanded. Do you mean to throw rocks at us? Yes, General Thorn said, his voice utterly flat. The mining ships fired. They did not launch missiles. They did not fire energy beams. They fired gravity projectors, modified high-powered tractor beams. But they weren't pulling. They were pushing, and they weren't pushing at the Vilisk. They were grabbing the debris of the planet Haven, the new asteroid belt, the funeral pyre of 10 million humans, moved, moon-sized chunks of rock, mountains of superheated iron, entire continents of fractured crust. All of it was seized by the gravity beams. The human fleet, in perfect, terrifying synchronization, threw the remains of the planet at the crippled Vilisk ships. Admiral, Krell's tactical officer screamed, his voice breaking in sheer primal terror. They're not. That's the planet! It's coming at us! On the view screen, Krell could see it. A wall of rock and fire accelerated to a terrifying velocity. A shotgun blast made of an entire world. His ships had no shields. They had no engines. They were targets. Krell finally understood. This was the human persistence. This was the human chaos. They didn't just sacrifice their home. They used it. They weaponized their own grief. They took the ashes of their dead and used them to scour their enemies from the sky. You were warned, General Thorn's voice said. A quiet judgment over the chaos. You mistook our compassion for weakness. You thought because we value life, we would not know how to end it. You were wrong. The indomitable claw was struck by a piece of rock the size of Krell's own capital city. The ship, the pride of the Imperial fleet, was shattered. The bridge cracked open to the void, emergency fields flickering, barely holding the atmosphere. Krell was thrown against the back wall, his armor cracking. His last thought, as the cold of space began to bite at him, as his vision faded to black, was of the Signian Elder, the shimmering light, the sad resonant voice. You will not understand their sacrifice, and by the time you do, it will be far, far too late. The Vilisk Imperium's Third Fleet ceased to exist. It was not defeated. It was erased, annihilated by a ghost, by the memory of a planet. But the victory was not clean. It was never clean with humans. The very act of throwing a planet, it had a price. The gravitational shear, the stress on the mining ship's reactors, it was too much. General Thorn watched from the bridge of the Endurance. His own screen showed damage reports. The prospector's dream, a massive iron hauler crewed by a volunteer family of miners. Its gravity drive had overloaded. It tore itself apart. The Juno's Hammer, another civilian ship, was hit by a piece of friendly debris. This was the human way. A victory that felt like a funeral. They had won. They had saved the refugee ship. They had stopped the Vilisk. But they had lost Haven. And they had lost the brave civilians on the mining fleet who had come to avenge it. Thorn closed his eyes. Begin search and rescue, he said, his voice thick. Find who we can. He looked at the Vilisk flagship, the indomitable Claw. It was a wreck, but it was not fully destroyed. and send a boarding party. I want him. Grand Admiral Krell awoke to a sharp hissing pain. He was alive. He was in a clean white room, a human medical bay. The air was warm, too warm for a V-Lisk. He tried to move, but he was restrained. "Don't," a voice said. He looked over. A human medical droid and a human doctor were watching him. "You had multiple fractures and severe vacuum exposure. By all rights, you should be dead," Krell stared. Why am I alive? Why did you save me?" The doctor, an older woman with kind eyes, finished adjusting a diagnostic screen. "Because that's what we do. We save people, even our enemies. General Thorne wants to speak with you when you are stable." Krell was lost. This was the ultimate illogical act. They had destroyed his fleet with savage, unimaginable brutality, and then they had saved his life with gentle, tender care. He did not understand these creatures. He truly did not. An hour later, he was brought in a hover chair to the bridge of the Endurance. It was not a grand, imposing room like his own. It was cluttered, functional. It smelled faintly of coffee. General Thorne stood by the main view screen, which now showed only the empty, star-filled space where Haven used to be. "Admiral Krell," Thorne said, not turning. "The war is over." Krell let out a dry, rasping laugh. "Over? General, I was one admiral. One fleet. The Valisk Imperium is vast. We will send 10 fleets. We will send 1,000. We will burn your Earth to a cinder for this insult." Thorne finally turned. His tired eyes held Krell's gaze. "No, you won't." Thorne held up a small metal data slate. It was scorched, half melted. "My boarding party found this on the wreck of your ship. It was your battle recorder. It saw everything. The destruction of Haven. Our tactic with the debris. It's all there." Thorne pointed to a small, fast courier ship docked just outside the Endurance. "We are putting you and that data slate on that ship. We are giving you a full fuel load and the coordinates back to your capital." Krell was stunned. You are letting me go?" "Yes," Thorne said. "You are not a prisoner, Admiral. You are a message." Thorne stepped closer. "You will take that slate back to your Emperor. You will show him exactly what happened here. You will show him what we did to your fleet. You will show him what we did to ourselves. You will tell him about Haven. You will tell him that 10 million people died to save 10,000 children." Thorne's voice dropped to a near whisper, but it was filled with a terrible, unbending iron. "You will tell him that there are 100 more colonies like Haven. You will tell him that Earth has 10 billion people, and that every single one of them, every man, woman, and child, will do exactly what the people of Haven did. We will burn our own homes to the ground to protect the next home. We will fight you in every system. We will fight you on every planet. We will fight you in every asteroid belt. We will not be logical. We will not be efficient. We will be persistent." He was using the Signian's word. "Go back, Krell," Thorne said, turning back to the stars. "Tell your Emperor. Show him the recording. Show him the price of one human world. And then ask him if he can afford another." Krell was loaded onto the courier ship. He was alone. As his ship prepared to jump, he looked back at the human fleet. The ugly, scarred ships were already at work. They were collecting the debris, collecting. They're dead. They were not celebrating. They were mourning and rebuilding. Already, Grand Admiral Krell returned to the V-Lisk Imperial capital. He stood before the Emperor. He played the data slate. The entire Imperial court watched in stunned, horrified silence. They watched the ships ramming. They watched the ground traps. They watched a planet detonate. And they watched that same planet thrown at their fleet. When it was over, there was no sound. The warning from the Signian Elder, once dismissed as the ramblings of a senile race, was now the single most terrifying prophecy in the galaxy. The Valisk Imperium did not send another fleet. They did not declare war. They did nothing. They pulled their patrols back. They fortified their own borders. They locked their empire down. The Galactic Empire had been warned about humans. They had been told not to mistake their chaos for weakness, not to mistake their emotion for fragility. They had not believed. And now, they did. But for the Third Fleet, for Grand Admiral Krell, and for the 10 million souls on Haven, it was far, far too late.